All right, it's your friendly favorite neighborhood apologist, Damon Richardson, for another edition of Urban Logia Live. So glad that you've decided to join us for tonight's hearty discussion on celebrity church culture. We appreciate you being on tonight, and let me see who is in the chat. Make sure you shout out where you are watching from, rep your city, as we customarily do. So far, yeah, I see Derek in here, Marie Clinton, Corey Jenkins. Blessings to you, Sean, Shotty Mills. All right. Let me know you're in the room. Let me know you're here. And as always, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. If you would be so kind, please help us to reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. I think we are nearing 7,000. That's 3,000 more to go. But we can get there. And the way to get there is to just recommend us to somebody that you know. Ask a friend, a Facebook friend. Hey, are you following Urban Logia, Damon Richardson on YouTube? If they're not, send them the link. Ask them, say, hey, listen, this is definitely it's definitely a channel you want to follow. It's very informative. You'll learn a lot. You'll grow in your faith and your understanding of God's word. Talk us up, but we can hit that 10,000 subscriber goal with your help. But we appreciate all of you who are members, you who are considering membership. But thanks as always for jumping in and being part of these discussions. Can't have them without you. And most of all, we give God the glory for the wonderful things that he has blessed us to be able to do. And all right, already we've got a new member. Thank God, Pastor King. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining Urban Logia's channel. We appreciate your support, your membership. Thank you again. Anybody else, join Pastor King. I see Chris Simmons. Blessings to you. Teresa Dingle Denton. All right. Chris Morton. Wonderful. And we are already up to about 50. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Keep hitting the like and the share button so people on Facebook and Instagram and wherever can know that we're here having this discussion. Very important conversation tonight, talking about celebrity church culture. And so the first thing that I want to really point out is why I did not say, thank you, Wayne, for your super chat. Just a wonderful brother and supporter of this ministry. We really appreciate you in the name of the Lord. And so I wanted to talk about, lead off first with, why not celebrity pastor culture? Why celebrity church culture rather than celebrity pastor culture? And typically when you find this conversation being had, whether it is in blogs or videos, people have had a lot to say about it. And for the most part, just as you would see with the thumbnail, it typically tends to lead off with celebrity church pastors. And while that is part of, I think it is part and parcel, one aspect of the issue. The reason that I think it is more properly celebrity church culture is because in reality, pastors didn't create the culture. The church created the culture, and the pastors are, for the most part, benefactors or beneficiaries of the culture that the church created. They would not be able to do it if certain factors were not present. And that's what I want to talk about tonight, what those factors are and how those factors contribute to this culture, what those factors mean, right? So we want to get into a number of things. As always, we'll do a little Q&A as long as it's relevant. Here's what I won't be doing tonight. I'm not really going to be getting into particular personalities or persons. While I could take that route, I think that would ultimately turn the conversation too far inward, right? Sometimes in order to be able to see things in context, you've got to zoom out just enough. See, now if you zoom out too far, it's too broad. If you zoom in too much, you're seeing more than the context. At that point, you're not seeing things in focus. And I think if we zoom in too much on particular personalities, we miss the point. Because in reality, even when you take the personalities away, this is something that is going on even in smaller churches. So this is not a phenomenon that is particular to church size. I mean, you got cats running around with 15 people acting like they're the coolest, most famous, wealthiest. They when you see them, they don't hardly want to speak. They got their their Gucci or Louis Vuitton belts on, and man purses and shades, all kinds of other stuff. Dark horn rimmed glasses and looking cool, or your super big, clear looking frames and all this other stuff. And, cool looking hairstyles, pointed, mohawk, blah, blah, blah. And, you go to some of the, they might have 15, 20 people, if that. So I promise you, this is not all about the mega pastors. This is not all about folk with 1,000 members or 5,000 members, 10,000 members, or whatever. Everybody's getting in on it. Even the cats that can't preach. I mean, they hardly know how to spell Leviticus, and they're running around like they don't even want God to recognize them. They're just too cool, too hot for TV, kind of acting. So that's one of the things that I wanted to point out is that this is not a pastor culture. This is a church culture. We created it. Now, somebody said, well, preacher, I don't know about that. I think it's I'm always going to come with the Bible now. I'm going to come with that Bible, the Bible. So, okay, let's come with the Bible, right? Okay, when you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 1 through 3, what you find there is essentially a celebrity church culture. Now, celebrity church culture can exist even when pastors are not necessarily participants of it. I doubt very, very strongly that Paul was a participant of it. In fact, I know he wasn't. I highly doubt that Apollos was a participant of it. I highly doubt that Peter or Cephas participated in it. But it still existed in the Corinthian church. It was still there. Part of the church. I'm a follower of Peter. I'm a follower of Paul. I'm with Apollos, right? That's my favorite preacher, right? And they were camped out around particular personalities. It was one of the many things that had the church divided. These pastors were not playing along with the game, but the culture was still there. And so Paul wrote to the church, and he had to mention, listen, first off, is Christ divided? Well, that's a rhetorical question. The answer is obviously no. Well, if Christ is not divided, then his body should not be divided. It should not be splintered around factions and tribalism, sectarianism, and personality cults, right? And yet, that's exactly what was going on. It was a personality cult. And of course, the word cult comes from the same root of the word for culture, right? So it was part of that. Yeah. So it definitely existed. And the fact is, I do believe this, that so it's number one, it's not new. It existed in the early church. So, it's no sense for acting like this is some brand new phenomenon. Oh, look at what the church is doing now. If we can just get back to the ways of the early church. Well, the early church had problems too. I hate to bust your antiquity bubble, but the early church had all kinds of problems too. There were issues with false doctrine. There were issues issues with favoritism and, bad theology. You had selfish ambition and all kinds of stuff. So this whole celebrity church culture kind of thing existed in a particular form in the Corinthian church. Now, I happen to see a correlation between what existed in the Corinthian church and what exists today, particularly in Western churches in the U.S. and particularly in Europe, right? So here's some of the correlations that I see. One of the first things is that when I look at the Corinthian church, who they are and what they are like, the correlation that I make almost immediately is that celebrity church culture thrives best in a church that emphasizes and places gifts over the God of the gifts, and particularly over the gospel, right? So let me say that again. Celebrity church culture thrives in church context that places gifts and emphasizes gifts over the gospel and the God of the gifts. So that was one of the things that Paul constantly pointed out in his writing to the Corinthians. He constantly was refreshing them about what the gospel is, and even told them, I literally, he's like, listen, I endeavor to know nothing among you but Christ and him crucified, right? And so he literally told them that, it's really about the gospel, right? That's where the focus needs to be on. It needs to be on Christ and not on personalities. He's like, who's Paul? He's like, I'm glad I never even baptized none of y'all. I'm glad I never even got around to baptizing y'all. Y'all would really be flipping out talking about the Pauline cult, right? And all this other stuff. They would have really been flipping out if Paul had even baptized them. And he was like, were any of you baptized in the name of Paul? No, I didn't even baptize any of you, right? And so, what he was saying is this. I mean, who's Peter? Who is Apollos? Who is Paul? But servants. In fact, we are at best just planters or waterers. Like, planting and watering gets you nowhere except God gives the increase. If it weren't for increase, then there would never really be any supernatural growth or anything that we can attribute to the work of God. In other words, the church is a phenomenon of God. Salvation is a God phenomenon. It's like it doesn't belong to us. We're just instruments. We plant and we water. But if there's no increase, even planting and watering are just futile exercises. They don't get you anywhere without increase. God's the one that gives that. So who are we in reality, right? So Paul's emphasis was you got to get back to the gospel. The second thing that Paul emphasized with the writing in his writing to the Corinthians, especially when you look at chapters 12, 13, and 14, Paul had to remind them that at the end of the day, even the gifts are not more important than the giver of the gifts. See, they had forgotten about, the greatest gift was the gift of God himself. They had misplaced that reality, and they were more focused on the charismata, the gift, than they were on the giver of the charismata. And so at the end of the day, the gift had become more of a end-all, be-all. It had become the primary focus. And so Paul reminded them, hey, there are many gifts, but there's one Lord. There are many different kinds of administrations, but there's one God. There are diversities and differences in the way these gifts operate, but there is one Spirit. The emphasis is on the God of the gifts and not the gifts. And when you lose sight of that, then you have charismania. And guess what? Celebrity church culture tends to thrive in best, I should say, not only, but best in churches that have misplaced the centrality of the gospel of Christ and the God of the gifts, right? So that's one of the things that I wanted to point out. And so let me hang on just a second. Let me pull my notes up here. All right, so that's one of the things that I wanted to point out, that it's really celebrity church culture, not celebrity pastor culture. And so let's talk about exactly what celebrity church culture is. What are the characteristics of celebrity church culture? So one of the things that I would point out, I'm sure that we can come up with essentially an exhaustive list, right? I don't have time to exhaust every characteristic, so I'm going to pick out a few very important characteristics, or a few characteristics that I think are incredibly germane to this conversation. So one is, I believe, what contributes to celebrity church culture and what is most characteristic of it is an unhealthy honor culture. Unhealthy honor culture. So we can gather when we read the Pauline letters that Paul had a healthy sense of biblical leadership. Not only that, but we forget Paul's culture, right? Not only as a Jew, but as a Roman citizen living in the larger Mediterranean world. What was there, and there's some overlap between culture. There are senses in which Jewish culture and Greco-Roman culture were poles and articles apart. Yet there are times when their cultures actually overlap. Like there are similarities in their culture, especially in their nomenclature in terms of the way they named persons, right? Sometimes these three kinds of names, right? What was it? Nomen, trinomen, and praenomen. So it's three different names, right? Not like first, middle, and last name, but I mean three names, right? So you had some of that in Jewish culture and Greco-Roman culture. But another overlap is what you would essentially call honor and shame type culture. That was big in among both cultures. And so so Paul, obviously coming from an honor and shame type culture, you hear him making appeals to other believers. You read Romans and you hear him talking about, give honor to whom honor is due, right? And that wasn't just in the church. That wasn't just, when the bishop come to town, there was a healthy sense of honor. There is a healthy sense of it. You see it in his pastoral letters as well. Give honor to whom honor is due. And the elders that serve well, they're worthy of double honor because of their labor in the gospel, so forth and so on. There was a healthy sense of honor in that. And you get that from Paul. In celebrity church culture, it's the opposite. It's an unhealthy honor culture. It is when you are exceeding honor to the point of veneration, even idolatry. Dare I say idolatry? Like it's gone way too far. The man of God, the man of God, and it's at what point? At what point is the emphasis on the man of God, and or that is the man of God rather than the God of the man, right? So we keep forgetting because we say man of God so much that we forget about the God of the man. He's the star. Like there's only one star. There's only one star. That's the bright and morning one. That's the true Venus. Peter said that he shines brighter he shines brighter and brighter each day, right? He's the true star in the church. But this unhealthy sense of honor culture, where way more honor. You got cats out there that live for essentially 4 dates or 5 dates out of the year, and they probably drive in more money around those 5 dates than any salary could even justify. They're gonna make sure that you're celebrating their birthday. Now, and again, hear me and hear me good. Damon Richardson is not saying that you can't recognize the pastor's birthday. Let me just back up and say this. First of all, this whole notion of the pastor, as opposed to a plurality of elders / pastors, is another big part of the problem. See, that's another thing that makes it even easier. It's when you have a single pastor-led kind of congregation. It's easier then to have that kind of and somebody says, oh no, we got assistant pastors and this, that, and the other. Yeah, but if they're just figureheads, then what does that mean? But when we're talking about a plurality of elders where the lead elder or pastor is the first among equal, then we're really not talking about some superstar type dude. In most of these congregations, watch this. You think I'm wrong? You think I'm wrong? Name most of the congregations that you know of in the New Testament and tell me who the pastor is, definite article. Tell me who the pastor is, definite article. You can't. In fact, we don't see indication of a singular bishop until the early 2nd century as a result of Ignatius's writing and his desire to bring greater control over some of the issues that were going on in the church of Antioch, some of the false doctrine there, so forth and so on. It was his suggestion for there to be a singular bishop, right? That's the first time we even see it in church history. Don't believe me? Go check it out. I'm telling you, it's the very first time you see it. So that's already part of a problem. But let me get back to what I was saying. Lost track. So this unhealthy honor kind of culture, right? So these guys are going to make sure you celebrate their birthday, and then you got churches now raising all kinds of funds. We got to give the pastor a birthday gift, and then you divide into groups with teams, this, that, and the other. Everybody's competing to see who can raise the most money. This group came up with 10 grand. That group came up with 20. This group came up with 30, 40. I doubt that when Paul said double honor, that's really what he had in mind. So that's a real big day. Ooh, pastor's birthday, right? Then let's put this on the calendar. Let's make sure pastor's appreciation. That's another date on the calendar. Nothing wrong with appreciating and honor. I'm talking about the unhealthy excessiveness of honor culture. I've gone to pastor's appreciations where you've never heard preaching about Jesus, and the message was about the pastor. And y'all, everybody that gets up making their little tributes and this, that, and the other, everything is about the pastor. Again, the man of God, less the God of the man. And y'all know the pastor be sacrificing. And I tell you, blah, 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 this, that, and the other, so forth and so on, this, that, and the other. And then, you're listening and you're like, good Lord, there's a whole lot of worship going on here. I mean, this is not really, really honor in the biblical sense. This has gone way beyond that. And so what's going to happen? Pastor pastor anniversary. Well, we're probably going to raise anywhere between 70, 75,000, this, that, and the other. Oh yeah, we got to send pastor on vacation. Okay, again, honor leaders. Hear what I'm saying? Honor leaders. I'm talking about unhealthy honor culture and how it contributes to celebrity church culture, right? So, so you got that. That's 2 dates, right? Then when the church's anniversary comes around, the emphasis is back on him again. That's 3 dates at least. Then if he's got a wedding anniversary, the church going to celebrate it. Churches, pastor's wedding anniversary, they're going to celebrate that. Then they might even celebrate his wife's birthday. That's at least 5 dates on the calendar. And I remember one time I kid you not, I was at a pastor's anniversary and one of the MCs got up and said, come on, we gotta give God praise for the man of God. Everybody stand up. I'm sure God has no problem with us giving the man of God praise for a little while. I'm sure he doesn't have any problem with us not giving him praise and giving the man of God praise. That's literally what that preacher said. I remember looking around and thinking that the ceiling was going to fall in on us. Yeah. Unhealthy honor culture. A second thing is unhealthy dependency culture. Unhealthy dependency culture. Write this down. That's number 2. What do I mean by that? I don't care who your favorite preacher is. And I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. I don't care who's doing it. I don't care who's practicing it. I don't care how popular they are. I don't care how sound their theology is. I'm talking about ecclesiology. God never designed there to be such a creature as one church in 10 locations with one guy leading all of it, having little branch managers and branch babysitters. And then when it comes down to the preaching, everybody's looking at the simulcast of the superstar preacher. You know what that creates? Not only does it create and contribute to celebrity church culture, it is the antithesis of leadership development. It is the antithesis of what Jesus was establishing with the apostles that you hear Paul talking to Timothy about. The things that you have heard and seen in me do, the same commit to faithful men who will do what? Who will teach others also. And so the process of discipleship and leadership development doesn't run around one guy. So you can't possibly tell me that that was God's dream, that was Jesus's idea for the church. That's completely foreign. Listen, I'll go this far. One church in 10 locations is essentially a cult. Try me on my ecclesiology and see who will win that debate. That's essentially a cult because it ends up running around the energy level and being completely dependent upon the personality, the charisma, and the output of the one person. You want to know why so many of these pastors are committing suicide, walking away from ministry, failing morally and all of that? Because too much daggone dependence and burden is being put on these people to walk up under a burden and a responsibility that nobody in the Bible ever put on one single person. This is the result of an unhealthy dependency culture. Try me on my ecclesiology. Try me. So it doesn't matter what pastor you like and who's doing it. One pastor in 5 locations. It's not the model. It ain't never been the model. That's not how it is supposed to be. And all it's doing is breeding more and more of the worst kind of stuff in Christianity. It leads to, not only does it lead to celebrity church culture, but it leads to this franchising and consumerism kind of effect that you see going on in Christianity. Jesus is the product. The pastor is the pitch guy, right? He's the one selling it with his celebrity. He's the all-state man, right? And he's popular, so forth and so on. You like it because he likes it. You like Yeezys because Yeezy is wearing it. He puts it out. You like that kind of shirt because that celebrity wears that kind of shirt. You like those shoes? It's because that celebrity wears those shoes. You really don't like the shoes. You just like it because the person you like likes it. They wear it. And so it turns the church into this franchising kind of effect that seems to work. But why does it work? It works because of the dynamics that go into essentially a charismatic based leadership model. And when I say charismatic, I'm talking about based on the charisma of the leader, that person's gifting, that person's popularity. Listen, I have heard of churches that had multiple campuses that were looking for campus pastors, not to really lead the congregation, right? But to essentially manage that particular campus, right? Every now and again, teach a little Bible study, and maybe 1 or 2 times out of the whole year, maybe preach. But all of the preaching is going to be focused on the superstar celebrity pastor at the main campus, right? Now, I have read where, and I've seen this myself, so I'm talking about what I know, where when you look at the characteristics of what they're looking for, they're not even looking at 1 Timothy and Titus. They're asking questions like, can you essentially imitate the celebrity pastor? Can you preach messages? Is your style of preaching just like his? They're looking for people with a similar style, a similar look and feel that they can essentially end up duplicating what they have at the main campus. How biblical is that? You tell me. Tell me. Talk to me. So this unhealthy dependency culture that's completely run around the energy, the output, the celebrity of one person. So all of these campuses, the reason why people are gathering in these various outposts is because they're there because that guy? Well, yeah, that's exactly right. They're there because of that guy. Well, guess what? I don't need to name names, do I? Do I need to name names? No, of course I don't need to name names. You know exactly how that works. When that guy fails, watch what starts happening then to the ministry. So, unhealthy honor culture, unhealthy dependency culture. What else? Entitlement over servant leadership. That's number 3. These kind of cultures create cultures of entitlement over servant leadership. The perks and the benefits of being that guy are the entitlements that go along with it. Not the servant leadership. Not to be the great servant, but to be the greatest one served. Right? Everybody wants to be around you. Everybody wants your autographs, that and the other. You're cool, got your hair brushed back, got the gel in there or whatever, the mohawk, got the cool, super cool looking glasses, this, that, or the other. You got the $5,000 sneakers on, the skinny jeans or the rip, blah, 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 blah. Super cool. But what comes along with that? This sense of entitlement that makes you somebody. It is the antithesis of servant leadership. Servant leadership is not about being somebody. Let me just remind you of the gravity of this situation. So let me get exegetical and theological with it. Pastors Remember that word pastor? That word really only appears one time in the New Testament. And the one time it appeared in the New Testament, in Ephesians, it shouldn't have even been there. It's what you would call an inconsistency in translation. The word pastor is a later terminology. It's a later terminology. It's an English term. It comes from the word pasture, which is where the shepherd worked, in the pasture. So what word was there? The Greek word is the word poimen. Poimen. That means shepherd. Suddenly now, the word no longer has CEO appeal, because a shepherd was not a high octane position. It certainly had no allure to it. It had no glamour to it. It was not something that somebody attained to. You know what I want? I want to become a shepherd. That's my goal in life. I want to be a shepherd. Nobody attained to that. So and once we can successfully, once we are successful in renaming a thing, we can become successful in terms of new meanings that we pour into the new name. But if we revert back to shepherd and the lowliness that is associated with the occupation, I wonder how many people would feel high and mighty walking around talking about, I'm a shepherd. Oh, you see how that works? And so I wonder if we just got more consistent with the 114 times that the word shepherd essentially appears between the Old and the New Testament, between the Hebrew and the Greek word. I wonder if we just got back to recognizing the nature of the role and calling it what it is. How many people would be walking around like they're Fortune 500 CEOs instead of lowly shepherds? Because when you're a lowly shepherd, it's not like Tupac, all eyes on me. It's not like Tupac, right? It's all eyes on the sheep. The shepherd had both of his eyes on the sheep, because if he took his eyes off the sheep, it was at any point that any wild animal could come in. And so it wasn't for all eyes to be on him, it was for his eyes to be on them. That is the role of shepherding. It's self-effacing. It's not by nature self-centered, but other-centered. Come on, y'all. Other-centered. Other-centered, not self-centered. But it's just too easy now in a entitlement over servant leadership kind of culture to be self-centered, for everything to essentially just be about you. You know, now these guys walk in, they got bodyguards. They got bodyguards. Nobody's after you, man. You work at the Quick Trip Monday through Saturday. Nobody's after you. What they want to do? Jump you? Jump you in the fellowship hall? Who's after you? You're not even out in the neighborhood for people to really be after you like that. What are you talking about? But you got bodyguards. Oh, I forgot. They're not bodyguards. Let's give them a biblical sounding name. Let's just call them armor bearers, which is really not even biblical. It's military. It has nothing to do with. Listen, that's a whole nother topic right there. I promise you on that. But yeah, there's an entitlement that goes along with that. But if we were to get back to the right nomenclature, it would remind us of the nature of the role. And the nature of the role is being self-sacrificing. Okay, let's go a little deeper. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, dear brother. Let's go biblical. All right, David's one of the most famous shepherds in Scripture. You'd agree with that, right? Now, normally when we hear about David's days as shepherd, one of the things that we're constantly reminded of is how he fought off a bear and a lion for the sheep, right? That all sounds good when you're preaching. David fought off the bear and fought off the lion. Okay, let me give you something to think about that you probably haven't thought about yet. These are sheep. These are sheep. They probably didn't even have a name. And David fought a lion and a bear. Let me remind you, typically, when a human fights a bear, bear wins, human loses. Typically, when a human fights a lion, lion wins and human loses. David was putting his life at risk. I wonder what the story would be and how it would preach today if David had lost to either the bear or the lion. That makes sense now when I'm reading Jesus in John chapter 10, that a good shepherd lays his life down for the sheep. Back that train up again, Richardson. It's the sheep, it's good sheep that lay down their lives for the pastor, the shepherd? No. It's a good shepherd that lays down his life for the sheep. I'm going to tell you how I know that's right. Not only is that biblical, but in the culture of celebrity church kind of thing, it makes it hard to imagine, with all of the attention and the love and the entitlement and the excessive honor that these guys get, it makes it difficult for me to think that that's the guy that would put his life on the line for me if it ever came down to it. It would seem more realistic that he would be the first person shooting for self-preservation if it came down to it. Tell me I'm lying. Tell me I'm lying. Folk that are into themselves are the first people to think about self-preservation. But folk who are other-oriented and other-centered, these are the people that are willing to sacrifice. That's why the mama will only have 3 dresses in her closet, making sure that her kids go to school fresh to death. I guarantee you, let somebody run up in the house and daddy's not home, that mama will lay down her life for her kids. And you know how you know she will? Because she sacrifices every day for them. Come on. You think these slick-headed, oversized glasses, Yeezy wearing, skinny jean wearing jokers are going to lay down their lives for anybody? No, because they're too into themselves to do it. And if 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 for you, it's because you're not paying attention. You're not doing the right kind of math. That's what that screams to me when I see it. I don't see a shepherd. I see a celebrity, not a shepherd. Right? So this entitlement, this, listen, shepherds, pastors are shepherds, not CEOs. They're not motivational gurus, right? They're not up there in the pulpit doing it for the culture. They are servants of the Most High God. That's it. Now, there were 3 words for servant that Paul used interchangeably in the New Testament. I'm not going to Greek you to death, but I'll say this. None of those 3 words for servant means anything noble or lofty in Greco-Roman society. Talk to me if you think I'm not telling you the truth. None of those words for servant meant anything lofty, noble, or anything. It was nothing that anybody wanted to be considered. And yet, that was the most prominent terminology when it came down to those that did the work of ministry from a leadership or a governing standpoint. What else? So we talked about unhealthy honor culture, unhealthy dependency culture. We talked about entitlement over servant leadership. Here's another one. Self-centered focus that draws attention towards self rather than Christ. I actually started leading into that one with the third one, but I'll go further into that. Right? It used to be that people were trying to draw attention away from themselves, because that was the idea. Draw attention away from me, not to me. Nowadays, the goal is to draw attention towards yourself. That's almost an unstated goal, is to draw attention towards oneself. Now, let me tell you what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that there will not be certain preachers that are more popular than others. Popularity is not the issue here. That's not what we're talking about. When we're talking about celebrity and popularity, it's not the same thing. There's nothing wrong with even being popular, as long as you use that popularity to platform the name of Christ to the glory of God. Listen, brother, sister, if you got popularity, squeeze it for all that you can give. Get out of it to the glory of God. Don't use it to bring glory, honor, reputation, self-aggrandizement, and fame and fortune and all of that for yourself. At that point, you're badly and terribly stewarding the opportunities that you have. Right? So don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Oh, Richardson just mad because he ain't pot. That has nothing to do with it. Don't read too much into what I'm saying. I'm talking about this celebrity culture. You see? So it's not about how much attention I can draw to myself. It's about how much attention I can put on his name. But that's not what's happening with these guys. These guys are too busy trying to associate with other big name people in order to make their name bigger. They want to be doing the photo ops with the rappers and doing this, that, or the other, so forth and so on. Again, essentially no harm in photo opping with another celebrity or popular person. Essentially nothing wrong with that. My point is that what's the point of that? What's the real goal behind that? And what I see with a lot of celebrity culture is this desire to increase and draw more attention towards oneself rather than the name of Christ. And if that weren't the case, it's no wonder why it's so hard for these guys oftentimes when they bring shame to the name of Christ and the church to move, to transition, because they're so used to the entitlement and the focus that they're gonna fight tooth and nail to hold on to their position because of what comes along with that. It's you know, there's a lot of attention that goes with that. Way more attention than what could even be good for a person who is an ambassador, a shepherd, a teacher of the Lord Jesus Christ. Way too much attention. When you look at the leadership of the apostles, constantly when they preached, if they performed a miracle, where and whenever that would have occurred, as non-normative as that was, you always hear them following up with, hey, listen, don't be impressed with me. You see it in Acts chapter 3 with Peter and John. Why are you looking on us as though we did this? This is the same Jesus that you crucified just a few days ago. It is by his authority and power that this man gets up and walks. Why are you looking at us? Paul on on Miletus? When they were shipwrecked? Was that Miletus? I think marooned after the shipwreck, and Paul puts his hand in the fire, set, and the other poisonous snake jumps on his hand and shakes it off, and everybody's looking around to see if he's going to fall out from the venom. Nothing happens. They want to start venerating Paul and Barnabas like they were Roman mythological gods. Excuse me. And when Paul's like, hey, hold on. No. That's not what's happening here. We're not gods. Now, we do serve a God, the true God, and we're here to tell you about him, but we are not gods. Make no mistake about it. And what do? Constantly taking the attention off of themselves. Don't be impressed with us. But you know what I find in celebrity church culture? Y'all are too impressed with these guys. Listen, these cats put on a pair of pants the same way that you do. Let me be a little bit more vulgar. They take a poop on the toilet, just like you. Nothing special about their poop. Their poop is waste, just like yours is, right? You are just too impressed and enamored with them, and they know it. And the more people are impressed and enamored with them, their lore grows, right? Here's what I'm trying to tell you. You're impressed with the wrong guy. You're impressed with the wrong guy. Don't be impressed with the man. Be impressed with the God that the man is serving. Jesus, the baddest man in town and out of town. But your eyes are too much on these celebrity cats to think you think he's bad. You think he's bad. See, and what does it do? It just creates more lust for attention, for fame, for notoriety. And what it does is it ends up feeding a culture so that the pastor of 15 people can't even faithfully lead 15 because his eyes are on that guy and how to be that guy. And he even thinks he's failing because all he has is 20. First of all, preacher, nobody told you that your congregation would ever grow beyond 30. Now, somebody says, well, shouldn't all churches grow? Well, why does a church cap out at 3,000? You know, some do, and they never get to 4. So what's the difference between capping at 30 and capping at 3,000? Church growth is not about the size of the membership. It's about the spiritual growth and health of those who are believers, who are committed to that assembly. Right? But the celebrity culture causes most pastors to see failure in what they are doing. And so they spend more of their time not only enamored with these guys, but attempting to bring that same kind of culture to their group and imitate that. And here's one of the other issues. It's already bad at the mega church. It's already terrible. And that's only 1%. But it's even worse at the smaller assembly because that culture is less sustainable in a 30-member and 40-member church. And so what does it end up doing? Causing these celebrity-minded kind of preachers to overtax and overburden their small group because they want to be riding around with the Bentley and the Lambo with suicide doors and taking pictures with influencers and other notables from so forth and so on. All kinds of nonsense. You get my point. What do we learn from what do we learn from the letter of James about all of this? See, in celebrity church culture, you can have a who's who in that kind of context. But according to James, that was favoritism. That was wrong. That was partiality. And partiality is the antithesis of what's at the heart of God. For God, whether you are wealthy, whether you are poor, whatever your socioeconomic status was, everybody was equal at the foot of the cross. James spoke against that kind of culture, and he had something to say about the lack of modesty. Let me say that. Modesty didn't mean the same thing to them that it often means to us. Modesty was not about a lady coming to church with, with a sundress on, with spaghetti strap shoulders and this, that. Oh, cover that up. Put a sheet on her. Put a towel on her. She's showing too much arm and elbow and shoulder. She getting the men in the church hot and horny. See, that's how we think about modesty. How much clothing you have on, kind of a deal. For them, modesty was an economic kind of thing. It was how wealthier people used expensive displays of clothing to leverage power against poorer people in the church, which drove Peter and James and them to write about that and say, don't come in here trying to show off with what you have on. Let your real adorning be on the inside. Now, I'm not saying you ought not have a nice watch and nice clothes on. We're talking about immodesty, the way people used their clothing in order to leverage importance and power against poorer people in the church, and use their displays of wealth as a means to make statements about their spirituality. Because it was widely believed that the more you had, the more blessed you were. That sounds familiar. Boy, that sounds familiar. That sounds like prosperity preaching that is wildly popular today in the church. Now, doesn't it? That's what modesty was about. Now, I wonder now, let's drive it home. I wonder how many in this celebrity church culture would be violating this notion of modesty and favoritism and all of this other stuff that we find in Peter and that we find in James. I wonder, when you're preaching to people, taking the bus and an Uber to get to church, I wonder when they see you on with $5,000 shoes, how modest that is. Oh, you got a problem with what the preacher has. Well, listen, here's what I learned a long time ago. Have what you have, don't let it have you, number one. And number two, just because you have it doesn't mean that you should flaunt it. Remember what your role is, sir. If you want to live like a high-profile CEO, then get a CEO job. But shepherding is not that. Mind you, here's the interesting thing. Most CEOs are walking around with a basic polo and slacks. Y'all jokers are just acting like y'all never seen money before. That's your problem. You're like the cat that, you got the pink zoot suit for Easter, like you just never had money and you never, just looking like, a bag of Skittles, just looking ridiculous. So, so that's it. So where we at? 58 minutes. I'm done with my rant. I'm done with my talk. Let's hear from you guys. What do y'all have to say? Let's go to the audience. Now, if you're going to ask a question, please preface your question with the word question, number one. Number two, please make it relevant to the conversation. Today, we're not talking about nothing in the ancient Near East. We're not talking about demons. We're not talking about principalities and powers, the rulers of the darkness of this world. We're not talking about fasting. We're not talking about Daniel in the lion's den or Noah in the ark. Celebrity church culture. That's the topic. So ask questions relative to that. That's number two. Number three, if you even have a challenge for something I said, I welcome it. I promise I will not embarrass you. I will not use my platform to be rude or disrespectful to you. I expect at times there will be people who will be like, I kind of disagree with that. And if you want to push back, in fact, put that in front of your pushback. Say pushback. That way we can get to it, and then I can address it. That would make this whole dialogue even better. That would make it even better. That would liven it up even more. I don't ever want my lives to be monologues. I do my little piece, and I'll always, at the end, give time for some Q&A and some, so we can start the discussion piece, right? Okay. Let's go. So let's see. Remember to put question in front of it so I will see it. And pushback in front of it. So let me see. How do we change celebrity culture practically? $1 million question. That's $1 million question. So we change it by essentially getting back to, number one, biblical ecclesiology. So we got to start with, you know how you got to break a thing down to its foundation? Well, that's what's wrong with a lot of this stuff. It's wrong foundationally. So again, like I said, a lot of these things are pastor-led. That's why cults are able to thrive, because they're built around this one guy who's the strong man of the thing, right? So we got to get back to more elder-led type governance, right? Church ecclesiology, polity, if you will. So that's one of the things, because that creates within it a degree of accountability, that checks and balances that almost ensures that this maverickism and renegade rogue kind of stuff doesn't happen, unless they're all just taken away with the foolishness. So that's one of the things. The other things is that we've got to reprioritize, right? You one of the things that I've learned is you don't go into ministry unless you have a philosophy of ministry. I bet if I would have asked some of these celebrity church kind of people what their philosophy of ministry is, they probably wouldn't even be able to tell me, because a philosophy of ministry serves to remind the leader what they're there for, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what it's all about. All of that goes into a personal philosophy of ministry, right? And so we need to start getting that back into the church. Third, we need to return back to servant leadership shepherding models, right? Because number one, that's what's driving the culture. These cats don't want to be shepherds. These cats want to be superstars, and shepherds are not superstars. They're not. It's nowhere in the job description. They want to be celebrities. The only stars that shepherds sat under were the ones in the sky. You see? So there we go. Good question. Appreciate that. Let's see where we at. Can you address the church names and how celebrity pastors use that to stand out? I'm not sure, Brother Samuel, what you're asking there. If you can rephrase that a little bit more specifically, I'll be glad, brother, to get around that, to answering that question. I'm just not sure about the first part. So if you just rephrase that a little bit more specificity there, I'll jump back on it, brother. Put question in front of it too, so I'll see it. Let's see. Wayne, what do you think about preachers that use props such as cars and high-end items? Now, let me try and be balanced in this. I don't think that there is anything inherently wrong with using a prop for an illustration. I have concern, though, that when people depend upon props, it typically is because they're not putting enough emphasis on the text. The text tells the best story. It is from the text that we derive the greatest principles, points, and so forth and so on, right? You see what I'm saying? When we're not preaching the text, we need to use these things more. To me, it just says there's less dependence on the text than there is support for the text. I love a good analogy, but analogies get overused, and sometimes they actually cause the theology in the text to break down, right? So use analogies. Don't use analogies too much. You know, if you got to use a little illustration here or there, just don't do it too much. Let the sermon talk. Let the text talk. Typically, cats that do a whole lot of that are not letting the text talk. There's too much dependence upon theatrics rather than context. So a little bit of anything can be good. You know, but too much of that is every time you turn around, you're doing, you know, you got a little display thing going on, this, that, or the other. Chances are you're not really cooking in the biblical kitchen the way you ought to. You're not preparing that meal and working that text the way you need to. So, you know, that's kind of my piece on that. David Kennard, is it okay for pastors to own $1 million home like John MacArthur? Is he a celebrity pastor? Listen, on to $1 million homes, so forth and so on, right? My whole thing is this, is that if a person is going to model modesty, then modesty for me would be somewhere a little lower than the median of where maybe somewhere at median, or maybe even a little lower than median of where the congregation is. Would I be able to afford more? Probably, especially if it's 10,000 people. But should I? Right? Let me put it like this, so you could catch me in this way. Paul argued for ministry leaders to be supported financially by congregations. He said the workman is worthy of their hire, and he even used a mitzvot, or a commandment from the Old Testament, to justify it. He said Yahweh even made legal provision for oxen who were doing work to be fed and to eat from the field that they work in. He said it like this: don't muzzle the ox that treads out the corn. Imagine the ox is working in a field of food, but you got a muzzle on his mouth so he can't eat any of it. How cruel. But watch this. The oxen's freedom to eat corn doesn't mean he ought to eat all of the corn or even too much corn, right? He's there to work. So I think that's where modesty needs to take hold. I'm not the guy to say where the cutoff is, as in some hard number, right? But for the most part, I would say right at median or below. The shepherd needs to model some modicum of modesty. Don't go around preaching against word faith pastors and then your house is bigger than theirs. That's not a good look, right? That's all I'll say on that. Good question, David. Appreciate you, man. You said, can you do a call-in show the next time? I don't know how to set something like that up. That might be interesting. I'll probably need a whole lot of help and a whole lot of management of that to make sure that doesn't run away and get wild. But I might be interested in doing something like that at some point. Obviously, we would need screening and all kinds of other things to pull that off. Now, I will be doing shows with more guests. I've done them in the past. I'm going to be doing a lot more of them in the near future. But call-in thing, we'll see about that. We'll see how that works. Let's see. Michael King, do you believe that money is a motivating factor for many of the things that are taking place in this culture. Yeah, but not just money. I mean, power is as addictive as money is. In fact, in the first century, in the Greco-Roman culture, power was more desirable than even money. Listen, even wealthy people often became slaves in the Greco-Roman culture. It was powerful people. It was having power that people that was the thing that people were most after. Because when you had power, you had the ability to exact honor from people, and the ability to move things and control outcomes, so forth and so on. So just in our culture, so yeah, so money, the love of money, um, definitely power, and just self-importance, just self-importance. People are people are in love with themselves. They really are. They're in love with themselves, and the more their name grows, their brand, the more they start feeling themselves, kind of a deal. Oh, Charles, thank you. God bless you too, dear brother. Thank you. All right, my brother Samuel, can you address how church names, denominations, and lack of plurality in elders is part of the problem, especially being that none of these things are found in Scripture? So we talked about the plurality of elders twice already. So we already addressed that. Now you say, can you address how church names and denominations are part of the problem? When you say church names, I'm not sure if you mean church names like, let me see, Ethos Church or Celebrate Church, or the Ladder Church, or something like that. Just some old crazy name that I'm not sure if that's what you mean. Uh, you know, some of those names are kind of funny. Some of those names, I'm kind of like, huh? Is that a church? I mean, what are they going for? Sometimes this whole cool thing, we just want to sound cool. Water Fountain Church, you know. I don't know what some of these names are even going after nowadays. Everything is just, it's like cool is a value in celebrity church culture. Everybody wants to be cool now, you know. Everybody wants the cool look. Everybody wants the cool sound, and I guess that might be part of what you are asking about when it comes down to church names. I'm not sure. I haven't thought about the correlation between denominations and this phenomenon. Um, I haven't thought about it. I'm sure there is some correlation there, but yeah, that's the best I could do in terms of answering that question. But we definitely dealt with the plurality of elders already as a question. Appreciate you, bro. Let me see. And there you go. That is the $1,000,000 question. What is your philosophy of ministry? If you're a preacher, you need to be speaking to that. And a lot of that has to do with um, your philosophy about serving, about leadership, about worship, a number of different things. Your philosophy of ministry as it relates to missions and evangelism, so forth and so on, is you got to spell that out with scripture so that they can know what you're about, what you think about these things, how these things are supposed to function, how important they are to you, how you intend to carry these things out. Yeah. If you've ever been to seminary, they made you put one together. That's for sure. I encourage you, if you've never been, Google it. You can find a whole lot of templates and examples of what goes into it. But I want to challenge you, if you are a preacher, I don't care if you haven't even preached yet. If you feel called to preach, whatever it is, wherever you are, if you haven't done a philosophy of ministry, I want to encourage you to do some homework. Start tonight. Put a philosophy of ministry together. It will be one of the best things you have ever done. I promise you. And let me know. Share it with me. I'd love to hear about it. Let's see. Do you think churches are putting too many young people in charge and it's adding to the problem? Not necessarily young, because I see a whole lot of older guys that are making that are doing a whole lot of this that I'm describing. It's not just young. I don't think it's a generational issue. I do think it's a cultural issue that spans generations. Now, I do have a problem when you talk about youth. I have a problem with inexperience. I do have a problem with inexperience. We all should have a problem with inexperience. Just because somebody is young doesn't mean that they're disqualified. But we got to be careful that the level of leadership is proportionate to their experience. Otherwise, what happens is what Paul said. He said, not a new convert. We can easily also understand that in light of inexperience. They become lifted up in pride and fall into the snare of the devil. That can even be an older person as well. Right? So we just got to be careful with that. Is it okay for celebrity pastors' kids to follow them as their successors? There's a word for that. There's a word for that. And just as I got ready to say the word, it would be that my what do they call that? Nepotism. Nepotism is the word. Church is not a family business. And I know every pastor envisions and desires to see his son succeed him. Just because you want that to happen doesn't mean that that's what should happen. And I'm not saying it can't happen in certain circumstances. Keep in mind, though, that church is not family business. It's not all in the family. And I've seen too many churches destroyed when the family of the pastor muscles control of the church because they feel like since their dad or their uncle or the granddad or the brother or the husband was the pastor, then the church belongs to us. My daddy worked too hard. Well, guess what? He had about 300 other people in here that gave a whole lot of money and put a whole lot of time, talent, and treasure into this. He didn't work that hard. He definitely didn't do it by himself. So this whole notion. So I don't even think that's an issue of celebrity church culture kind of thing. That's just an issue with nepotism in church. And how oftentimes pastors feel like they want to make sure that they essentially deed the ministry. This ain't the time of the kings. You're passing it along to your son. That's not how it's supposed to go. I'm not saying it can't ever work that way, but that's not how it's supposed to go. And we are as bad with nepotism. Even companies have policies against ensuring that occurs. And the church, we got to get better in areas like this. Great question, though. Great question. Again, if you're not asking question, it's hard for me to know that. Thank you that it is a question because I'm reading with I'm what do they say? Farsighted. So things near to me are blurry, even with glasses. Greenleaf, that's my show. That was my show. I don't know why I like Greenleaf so much, but I did. Bishop was my favorite guy. I love Bishop Greenleaf. And I'm going to miss him with all his designer frames and all his velour sweatsuits and his coolness. But Greenleaf is exactly what is not supposed to happen. But I did love that show. Guilty pleasure, I guess. Antonio, I see you, man. Thank you. Appreciate you. Hang on. I know I missed a number of questions. I'm trying to get to y'all. How difficult must it be for a good pastor to teach a sound gospel and have to compete with entertainers in the pulpit. Right. So excuse me. Shepherds just need to stay faithful to the charge, right? And not worry about trying to keep up with what the demand is out there. Now, according to Paul, more of the as much of the problem lies with the people as it does with the preachers. He says that they will heap to themselves teachers. So, these shepherds need to make sure they're not trying to keep up with the demand. And then because they know that that's what the people that they're preaching to and leading want to hear, that they start changing their method. They got to make sure that they stay faithful to the truth. But at the same time, there's a responsibility for God's people to maintain a right diet towards the truth. Because as the people of God start hungering and thirsting for junk food, right, then it creates, obviously they develop this appetite, and then they start seeking after teachers who can provide that, right? So it shouldn't be hard for a shepherd that loves God, loves God's people. Jesus made that a stipulation of shepherding. He says, Peter, do you love me? Yes. Okay, then feed my sheep. So one way that shepherds demonstrate fidelity and love for Christ is their faithfulness in feeding the sheep, regardless of how many other false teachers are out there, how much money they're making with all their false teaching and lies and deceptions and gimmicks and all of that. We are never to be swayed by their popularity, by their fame, by their fortune. Don't come telling me that you just got so tired of it that you joined the circus. No. As we say in the Baptist church, a charge to keep. A charge to keep I have, and a God to glorify. Come on, deacon. Sing it. A charge to keep. Come on. Remember your charge. Remember your charge. Excellent, Penny. Excellent. Thank you. Where we at? I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. That's part of the celebrity culture. That whole reality thing. That whole reality thing. Listen, let me just say this. Listen, I know it's good to be a little vulnerable, a little transparent, so forth and so on. I know it's good to be that way. We live in this way. We live in this culture where keeping it all the way real and 100 is like being translucent, right? Like they want you to see through them completely, right? And that's not necessarily good. The way our minds work is there's a compartment in our mind that we reserve for heroes. Heroes may be ordinary people, but we have a special regard for them. And when I say heroes, I'm saying that in a loose sense. I'm not talking about the person that pulled the drowning man out of the water. I'm just talking about folk we look up to. Nobody wants to think of the hero in the same way that they think of everybody else. So preacher, by you getting on the reality show, letting them see everything going on in the house and participating in all that, all you're really doing is destroying the mystique and blurring the lines of respect and destroying the hero category that gives people a sense of reverence for your role and your office. And they're doing that because they think it just makes me more popular. But all it really does is it drags down the reverence of the role and makes it cheap. Get off the reality thing. Get back in your daggone study and feed the people of God. Get off this celebrity nonsense. Thanks, Roderick. Appreciate you. Let's see. Let's see. problem with celebrity preachers give ungodly celebrities a platform to speak over the saints. It is, yeah, that's exactly right. They're a big part of the problem. You know, if you platform teachers that are unsound in their theology, you become part of the problem. But you know, nowadays, with the big business of conventions and conferences, we want to get the notable names so we can bring more people out. So then conference is not really about spiritual refreshing and this, that, or the other, and teaching. It's about the business of getting as many people out and using the drawing card of the popular celebrity kind of fella to do it. I mean, that's part of the problem. So I have as much a problem with the person that platforms these people than the people that they're platforming, because it's unfaithful. Good question. Any pushback? Anybody out here with a pushback? Come on, y'all. Come on. Come on. Let's see. Do you think celebrity pastors are more influential than? I think it got cut off. So ask it again, because I think I like where it might be going. Jael, ask that question again. But do you think that it is wise to listen to the music that comes out of these churches with these popular celebrity pastors? I don't know if there's a correlation between the worship music and the celebrity, but oftentimes what we do see in a celebrity church culture, because remember, we're talking about celebrity church culture, not just celebrity pastors, because the culture is a bigger part of the problem. It is the culture that creates the celebrity pastor. We do tend to hear a lot of unsound theology in that, and we do tend to hear a lot of me-centric kind of worship and feel-goody kind of worship in those kind of things. Not necessarily. One is not necessarily correlated to the other, but we do tend to see oftentimes these cultures also produce, again, low view and value of scripture, unsound theology, so forth and so on. Good. What else? All right, we got just a couple of minutes. We're almost at the hour and a half mark. Asking for another person. How do you feel about church celebs appearing on secular platforms, Breakfast Club, BET Awards, and dodging or mishandling theological questions, performing with lewd rappers, so forth and so on? Yeah, that's part of the celebrity church culture. If I were invited on Vlad TV, if I were invited on the Breakfast Club, then my responsibility as an ambassador is to rep my embassy and my country, right? In this case, it is the kingdom of God, right? We are an embassy for the kingdom. Therefore, we are ambassadors. Wherever we are sent, we are to represent. We're not representing ourselves. We're representing our kingdom, our king, from our embassy. The church is an embassy on earth for the kingdom. It's really that simple. These jokers get on and they're so blinded by their own celebrity that they're just repping themselves, which is why they dodge the tough theological questions, because they want to appear more in line with I'm just going to say it. They want to appear more in line with the world than they are with the Bible. And it's no sense in dodging that, dancing around it, sugarcoating it, or trying to make it seem nice because we like that person. That's just compromise. That's just being ashamed. By no other name, it's just being ashamed. It is not repping Christ, it's repping you. And since you are more focused on popularity and placating to the world and appearing to be palatable and in line with their thinking. So your answers line up with that. You are letting Christ down and you are letting the body down. That's a fact. I don't care how popular you are. You're letting Christ down. You are there. If you have been given that popularity, go talk to Charlemagne, but rep Christ. If you can't do that, send somebody else, because it is not about your popularity. It's about his. It's let your light. See, the key in the your light is that the light is not yours. The light is Christ, right? We are just light bearers. He is the actual light. He is the source of the light. We are just the bearers of it. That's the light that they're saying shine. So it's not your light as in possessive yours, as in you are the light. It's his light. See? It's interesting because the word for celebrity etymologically literally comes from star or shining one. It's interesting. But yeah, now, gospel artists, I got to put them almost in a different category. Some of these jokers ain't even saved. They're just in the industry. It just happens to be the kind of music they sing. I can't even really address that in the same way because I'm talking about the church. Some of these folk don't even go to church. They just sing gospel. So as far as I'm concerned, may not be a good look to be performing with a raunchy rapper. But if you're not truly considering yourself a Christian and a part of the Christian church, where you're a part of a church family, submitted to biblical leadership and all that other stuff, that's almost a whole different category. But if you are, then you need to, even in your performances, bring your Christianity into the entertainment industry. Yeah, it's not a good look for sure. Excellent, 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 excellent. No pushbacks. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Where's the pushback? I want somebody to push back. I'm just y'all. I'm just playing around. Let's see where we at. I'm looking for questions. Doesn't God have pastors at the celebrity level to reach celebrities that are lost? I don't think God has anything to do with it. I think he's got less to do with that than anything. I think the culture creates this whole celebrity level kind of thing. And again, celebrity culture creates celebrity pastors. I don't think God has anything to do with that anyway. I don't think he's creating some celebrity no, I don't. We've done that. That's our monster. That's our Frankenstein, right? People reach who they reach by proximity, period. I mean, there's more folk who are not pastors with proximity to celebrities than pastors are. So, so no, I don't, proximity is, it is what it is, but I don't think the two have anything to do with each other. I don't believe God has anything to do at all with the celebrity church culture. That's something we created. It's such the antithesis of everything that we read about in scripture that, but how do we look at it? We feel like, well, if a person has ascended to such a level and all this, we feel like they're anointed and God's put them in that position and, God raised them up, this, that, or the other. And I think God is like, hey, you blaming me for, I don't have nothing to do with that. I think God is more inclined to be saying that than not. We tend to look at that as trappings of success that we think comes along with being anointed by God and all this other stuff that we put on that. I think very little of it has anything to do with God. Pushback. There we go. Okay. What does it say? I think as a millennial, it's better to see certain pastors as more relatable and not so rule-based driven. That pushes younger people away from church. Rakita. So I'm not even sure what that is a pushback to. So I'm not sure what I said that you might be actually pushing back on, right? Because being relatable to me doesn't have anything to do with the celebrity culture. I'm relatable. Anybody can be relatable, right? That's you know, yeah. So I don't one is not a cause of the other. Um, but I hear you though. I mean, I hear you. I even tend to agree that being a little bit relatable, even in the preaching, might go over better with millennials. I don't disagree with that at all. So yeah, I'm not sure how that really would be a pushback, but I definitely appreciate the weigh-in though. That's good. Good thinking there. Ah, Mr. Basketball said, me and Dr. CJ Rhodes owe you a steak when you come to Jackson, Mississippi. And listen, I will be coming, Lord willing, this year. And I like my steaks medium, not rare, and definitely not medium well. Anything beyond medium to me may as well be a hamburger. And anything a little less than medium, maybe little too much blood in there for me. But I love a good medium steak, and I will be there to take you up on that offer. If I don't come to Jackson, Mississippi for nothing else, it will be to take you and Dr. Rhodes up on that offer for that steak. Thank you, dear brother. I appreciate it. Let's see. You had asked a question. Hang on just a second. Evan, thank you for your super chat. We really appreciate you. Thank you so kindly. Two more, and I gotta go. Do you feel these diploma mills have destroyed a lot of these preachers because they filled their heads with false information, and they can help them get a quick doctor in front of their name? I think that is symptomatic sometimes of the celebrity culture. Somebody wants to skip the process and use all kinds of titles to create the aura of significance and importance. And so sometimes diploma mill honorary degrees and fake doctorates and all that stuff, can factor into that. I think that's just one symptom of this whole, where does that mindset, however, come from? This notion to use nomenclature to create the aura of significance and importance, which speaks more to what you would call the telos, the motive, the end game. Like, what's this preacher's end game? And if the end game is all about bringing notoriety to myself and making people think that I'm more important, or I've done more important things than what I've actually accomplished, then that's really, really sad. And I definitely think it's definitely symptomatic, without a doubt. Let's see. We're down to the wire. We're definitely down to the wire. Can you talk about the overreaction to celebrity church? People saying that they don't need the church anymore, staying home and occasionally and that's one of the problems that creates. That's exactly why it's problematic, because when people start getting tired of it, they feel like, well, why go to church? I get enough of that with the celebrity gossip and all of that other stuff that they watch on TV. I see that all the time. Why come to church for it? That's exactly why we really need to be really calling this out. Let's see. One last one. I know Isaac ain't doing nothing but causing trouble. So, is there any context where you think satellite campuses are useful or no? So that's a legitimate pushback. No, because it is not the model. It's not the model. Again, what does it create? It creates dependence upon the one guy, which is antithetical to leadership development. Leaders don't develop junior leaders. They develop people who succeed them. not who stay subordinate to them in every way, right? So that fails that test. Again, it points every campus back to the main one. Everybody's watching the simulcast. Is he the only guy that can preach? Oh, wait, what is it? Oh, everybody's here in all of the various outposts because of him. I wouldn't want people to just come to church because of me. So I don't see any good in that whole multi-campus thing, unless you're turning around and saying, we're going to install a biblical eldership team here. Even if it's part of our network, let it be part of the network. Let it be part of the network. But, I mean, we've got to be developing churches, not creating franchises. So I don't like it. I never liked it. And when there was this cult leader, Bishop S.C. Johnson, Sherrod C. Johnson, in Philadelphia, Church of the Lord Jesus Christ of the Apostolic Faith, in 1920, that launched his denomination, a oneness Pentecostal group that was extremely legalistic. It is from that stock that Geno Jennings comes with that same doctrine and ideology. He started a thing where all of the churches, and he had thousands of churches around the country, at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, regardless of whatever the time was, where that church was, they all turned on the radio, because wherever he had a church, they had a radio program and they listened to him. And he was the pastor over all the churches. Back then, folk had enough sense to call that a cult. Today, he was the most successful multi-church campus leader today. That's what we would be calling that. He would be the most successful pastor of a multi-church campus, because he had thousands of them that he was the pastor over. It is cultic. It is not biblical at all. And it produces, I don't want to go into the names and all that other stuff. Let me say this. It produces the Mars Hill effect. That's what it leads to. The Mars Hill effect. You see what I mean? Kind of a deal. My greatest pushback is, show it to me in the Bible. Where is it in Scripture? It's unhealthy. It's definitely unhealthy. Good, Isaac. I knew you was here to cause trouble. That's good trouble, though, brother. I appreciate it. Last question, and we're done. We're well over time. Thank you for your hanging in there with me. Last question. Would Jim Jones have been considered a celebrity pastor during his time? And if so, why haven't this generation learned from this incident? Not really. Not really. He didn't really have celebrity outside of his group. He ultimately did, become infamous. But you had elements of, obviously, celebrity culture in the cult, right? So you have that dependence. You got some of those pieces in there, but outside of his cult, no. Well, yes, I would just say at best yes and no. There are elements of celebrity church culture in what you saw there at the People's Church, but there's some differences as well. So yes and no. Some similarities, of course, without a doubt. But you're absolutely right. To your point, why haven't we learned from that kind of an incident? Seems like we're turning out more cults than reality. And a lot of times because we haven't recognized what a cult is. Cults don't just become cults without becoming cultic piece by piece. And it starts with personality cult. And I know a whole lot of folk with a whole lot of sound theology that are wrapped up into personality cults. So don't think you won't, as you're pitching your tent towards Sodom, that you won't actually one day have an address in Sodom. Talk to us, Lot. Because at one point he was just heading in that direction. At another point, he's actually living there. Churches don't become a cult, or a cult doesn't become a cult without becoming culted first, right? So listen, I gotta go. I'll just clear this up. There are pastors who have celebrity status. Doesn't mean that that's something wrong with that. So let me make that disclaimer. There are pastors who have celebrity status in that they are super popular and well known. That's not the same as celebrity culture, in the sense that they are using, again, it's what you do with it, and it's what it does to you, right? So we were to look at like a Billy Graham, for instance, and I think Georgetta is even bringing that up. She mentioned Billy Graham. You don't find him acting like a celebrity. What you find is him using his platform to influence people for the sake of the gospel. And so there we go. So great question. Listen, I gotta run. I'll let you guys go. Do me a favor, if you haven't subscribed yet to Urban Logia, please do so. Subscribe to our channel. Consider becoming a membership, and check us out at urbanlogia.org, where there are courses available for you to study with us. 2 courses are available now. Exegesis 1 for those who want the foundational pieces of learning how to rightly interpret scripture, and 4th century church history, so you can know the most developmental events, the most important people, the most important issues going on in the 4th century that essentially brought about some of the greatest theological development in church history. So 4th century church history, I promise you, it will equip you to be able to answer more effectively a lot of the contentions and the misinformation being perpetuated by the cults about Constantine and the Council of Nicaea and all of that stuff. Go there and take one of those courses. And again, you can find merch there, Urban Logia wear, all that good stuff. So until next time, blessings to you. Pray for me, and I'll see you. All right, y'all in Chicago, I'll be there tomorrow. Let's make it happen. Talk to y'all later. Blessings.